All right, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. We have with us today Christy Asbee from Disability Rights New York, going to be discussing service animals, emotional support animals. Christy, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having
I
me.
think this is such an important topic. I was mentioning to you off camera that, I'm on the board of my building in Manhattan, and we constantly discuss dogs and service animals and how the law always seems to be changing in some respects. Maybe you could give us a little bit about the historical need for service animals and why it's so important.
Yeah, service animals have been around as an accommodation for some time now. Um, in uh, in the mid 20 teens, the Department of Justice put some clarity on the regulations that permit service animals, and they gave us more guidance to work with, and we learned a little bit more about how people who need a service animal can access the service animals and where they have access to and what's reasonable. So we have a lot of guidance. There's a lot of litigation now that speaks about this, and we're at a place now where, in the context of the Americans with Disabilities Act, we know we have a pretty good understanding of when people can access their service animals. That's in employment, the employment context, the government context. So anytime you're going into a government program, you're going to a park, you're going to a library, you're going anywhere where the government is funding the program, you can have access to your service dog. Also, when you are going into a what's called a place of public accommodation, meaning a business open to the public, you can also have your service dog there.
So now there's a difference between a psychiatric service dog and an emotional support animal. Am I correct?
Yeah, you are. And service dog is that term. The term is actually service animal. That term is legally defined, and that's what the U.S. Department of Justice has defined under the Americans with Disabilities Act, to be very clear. And that is an animal that is a dog, or in very rare cases, a miniature horse, that is individually trained to perform a task or service for an individual who has a disability, and that person is generally the handler, what's called the handler, the person that has control of the dog. The dog is housebroken. It does not cause a nuisance. It does not sniff or bark or in jump or in other ways cause problems for people around that service animal. A psychiatric service animal is a service animal. There's no difference. It's just the tasks that it performs are related to a person's psychiatric disability, mental illness, PTSD, severe anxiety, agoraphobia, something of that nature. It's just a dog that's trained to provide services for people with those types of disabilities.
Now, there are certain animals that we know now would not be considered to be service animals. Am I correct? Could you tell the public a little bit about what's not included?
Yeah, emotional support animals, they also have a legal definition. Emotional support animals are um, are they might not amount to service animals. For one, if an emotional support animal can be any type of animal. Emotional support animals are animals that provide comfort for a person. They're not performing a task for a person. Emotional support animals don't have to be trained. They have to be well behaved if they're going to be in a housing setting. An important distinction between emotional support animals and service animals is that an emotional support animal is only legally protected in the housing context. So you're not going to go out into the community with your emotional support animal. For example, if you have a cat and you have identified with your medical provider that cat is providing you some sort of emotional service and comfort to help you with your disability, But it was otherwise a pet, but you've elevated that to be a emotional support animal by working with your medical practitioners. Then in the housing context, you could have that cat. And you have a legal right to that cat. Now, if you take that cat into the community only on a voluntary basis, would a, for example, place of public accommodation like a grocery store have to let you in with that cat? Legally, they don't have to let you in with that cat.
They don't have to. A lot of people don't realize that. Is the law changing now to expand the rights of those who have disabilities, who need emotional support, and need service dogs or psychiatric dogs?
There is no talk that I know of in the federal government or in the state that is specifically looking to expand a person's access to an animal other than a service dog, a service animal. There has been some communication at a city level in New York City that really hasn't, to my knowledge, manifested into anything regulatory or anything legal in nature, unless it's within the housing context. And again, ESAs are, only protected. ESAs, being emotional support animals, are only protected in the house, legally recognized in the housing context.
Have you seen abuse of in this particular area? Have you seen individuals who are claiming that their dogs are emotional support dogs that really aren't emotional support dogs? This is always a discussion we have at the co-op board. We always wonder, or people who want to bring their dogs onto the plane, where is the abuse happening and how do we stop it?
Yeah, I don't think that there is widespread abuse, mainly though, because when people come to our office, it's because they have a disability. And just for some background, I do disability rights advocacy, and I have a focus on service animals. Our office, Disability Rights New York, we have a general focus on assisting people who have disabilities with their disability related needs. We do receive a lot of calls where landlords, for example, are refusing somebody's access to their animals, whether they're service animals or ESAs. We do not see the abuse. We actually, there may be anecdotal information that we hear of through landlords. Largely, though, it's uncredible information.
That's fair. But where does somebody reach you if they have a question as to whether or not they could qualify for an emotional support dog or service animal?
Yeah, well, certainly anybody can contact Disability Rights New York. The best way to get in touch with us to see our information is online, www.drny.org. However, I will say that we're not we do not decide whether an animal is or is not an emotional support animal or a service animal, although we can help you walk through the process to make that determination.
I think that's very important to our viewers, because I think many people find themselves lost in this area, and certainly they appreciate you coming on and giving some really, really good advice on the topic.
Yeah, one important distinction to understand is that there are no certifications that have any legality to them for either service animals or emotional support animals. So if a housing provider, for example, is asking for a certificate for the animal to have that legal designation, the inquiry can stop right there, quite frankly, because that does not exist. It's a process that is carefully laid out in the law, and one thing that is not required by the person that has the animal is a certificate. It's just not required.
Christy, I want to thank you very much to Christina Asbee from Disability Rights New York for coming on, and hopefully you can come back in a couple of months and give us an update.
Yes, I'd love to come back. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, stay with us. Today's verdict has so much more right after this.